The moment your paycheck arrives, you are supposed to feel good. But most of the time, you barely get a second to feel anything before the money starts lining up to leave. If you sit down honestly and put your monthly income next to your fixed expenses, mortgage or rent, credit card bills, car payment, student loans, installment plans, you'll notice something a little uncomfortable. Your paycheck didn't arrive in your account. It passed through your account, like a tourist who boards at your employer's, stops briefly at your bank to take a photo, then immediately jumps on the next train, heading straight for your landlord, your lender, your credit card company, and every platform waiting in line. So let's start with a very simple question. Why do we go to work? You might say, to live, to provide for my family, to grow, to find meaning. All of those are true. But if we're being less polite about it, a lot of us go to work because we can't afford not to skip work, and the credit card goes delinquent. Skip work. And the car gets repossessed. Skip work. And next month has no floor under it. So the real question might not be why we work. It might be who made sure we can never stop. Last episode, we covered the attention economy, how after you clock out, your attention gets taken over by short-form video, social media, and recommendation algorithms. This episode, we're going after something older, deeper, and more invisible, something that controls why you have to clock in at all. Its name is debt. This video is not going to teach you how to pay off all your debt in 3 months. Those titles are usually inspiring, but by the end, the only useful advice turns out to be earn more, spend less. Thanks. My grandmother figured that out decades ago. What we're actually asking today is, why does modern society need so many people to be in debt? And more importantly, is the idea that Thai debts must be repaid. No exceptions. End of discussion. Really the eternal law it is presented as. Welcome to the economics of debt. Let's start with a story that appears in nearly every introductory economics textbook. Long, long ago, humans traded by barter. You had a chicken, I had an arrow. You wanted the arrow, I wanted the chicken. Simple exchange, but carrying chickens everywhere got inconvenient. So humans invented money. And then, once money existed, credit and debt followed naturally. It is a clean story, logical, almost satisfying. There is just one problem. It is probably not history. It is mythology. Anthropologist David Graeber, in his 2011 book Debt, The First 5,000 Years, made a very uncomfortable argument. There is no evidence that any human society has ever primarily operated through barter in the way that stories describes. None. This doesn't mean people never traded things. Of course they did. Trading your lunch snack for a friend's pencil, that is exchange. But that is not how an economy is organized, and societies without modern money. The more common arrangement wasn't I give you 3 chickens right now, and you give me a sheep right now. It was you help me build my house today. I'll help you bring in your harvest. Your daughter gets married. I'll bring a gift. Your family hits hard times. I'll cover you. Nobody settled up immediately. They kept track in their heads. That is credit. And the other side of credit is debt, which means debt didn't come after money. In many cases, debt came first, and money was invented later. To help track and settle it, flip that sequence, and everything changes. If you believe money came first, then debt looks like a natural extension of trade. Neutral, inevitable, just how things work. But if debt is older than money, then debt is a social relationship. And social relationships can be renegotiated, modified, cancelled, and in fact, throughout human history, they regularly were. 4,000 years ago, in ancient Mesopotamia, present-day Iraq, that was already being carved into clay tablets. Names, amounts, dates, interest rates. Remarkably familiar, just missing the app notification that says your statement is ready. But ancient societies had something ours doesn't: the debt jubilee. When a new king took the throne, one of the first acts was often to issue what scholars call a clean slate tree. Private debts cancelled. People enslaved because of unpaid debts freed. Land that had been seized as collateral returned, and here is the important clarification. This wasn't a blanket amnesty for every commercial contract. History is more complicated than a YouTube headline. But the core logic was consistent. Ancient rulers understood that debt couldn't be allowed to accumulate indefinitely. Why not? Because interest grows faster than crops. A harvest comes once a year, but debt compounds monthly. Rolling forward, growing whether or not you did. Left unchecked, the math always wins. Farmers lose their land to creditors. Families sell themselves into debt slavery. The freeborn population collapses, and suddenly there is nobody left to farm, fight, or pay taxes. The debt jubilee wasn't mercy. It was system maintenance. The Bible recorded the same logic in Leviticus every 50 years. The jubilee, debts forgiven. Land returned. The enslaved set free. Historians debate how consistently it was actually observed, but the concept existed because the problem was real. Debt, uncontrolled, devours societies from the inside. Now, let's look at a more recent example of debt as a control mechanism. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, British and other European colonizers across parts of Africa introduced what they called the hut tax or poll tax. The rule was simple. Everyone with a house must pay an annual tax in cash. In colonial currency, the problem, most local communities were entirely self-sufficient. They farmed, fished, traded, helped each other. They had lives. They just didn't have the specific coins the colonial government demanded. The colonizers' response: no problem. If you don't have money, go work at the mines, plantations, the railway camps, the colonial economy. And so the cycle ran. The colonial government created an obligation payable only in their currency. Local people entered the colonial labor market to earn that currency. They received wages, then handed the wages back as taxes. Someone had installed a coin-operated lock on their front door, and then announced, "We're not forcing you to go out and work. You just need coins." That is the power of debt and obligation as a control mechanism. It doesn't look like a whip. It doesn't look like chains. It can look remarkably civilized. Nobody dragged anyone into the mine. They walked in themselves because they had a bill to pay. That logic didn't disappear when colonialism ended. It just got a rebrand. The colonial hut tax became the mortgage, the student loan, the credit card minimum payment, the medical bill, all more modern, more optional seeming, more full of choice. But the shared structure is the same. You must generate continuous cash flow to maintain your life. And the systems that require that cash flow were built before you arrived and will continue after you leave. Now let's look at how this operates inside a modern financial system. Here's the thing that sounds counterintuitive, but it's actually the key to understanding the whole machine, your debt. On the other end, is someone else's asset, that credit card, bill you dread every month, in a bank's accounting. It is an asset. Your mortgage is a bank's asset. Your student loan is an asset in the financial system. Your other debts may already have been packaged, sold, and transferred. Now, sitting inside some debt investment portfolio you've never heard of. Debt is never just one-sided. For you, it is pressure. For someone else, it is cash flow. For you, it is how am I going to manage next month. For the system, it is stable, recurring revenue. Here is the sentence worth sitting with. The source of your anxiety may be the source of someone else's income. Now let's look at how banks actually create money. Most people assume banks collect deposits from savers and lend that money out to borrowers. That is roughly true but incomplete. In the modern banking system, when a commercial bank issues a loan, it simultaneously creates a deposit. You apply for a $100,000 mortgage. The bank doesn't retrieve $100,000 from a vault. It creates a deposit entry in your account and simultaneously records $100,000 as a loan asset on its own books. This is modern monetary creation at its most counterintuitive. Loans create deposits. Debt brings money into existence. Of course, banks can't do this without limits. Capital requirements, risk assessments, interest rates, borrower creditworthiness. All of this constrains how much new money can be created. But the mechanism is real. A very large portion of modern money was created through the act of borrowing, which means debt is not a side effect of the modern economy. It is the engine. If every household and business in the country simultaneously decided to stop borrowing and pay down all their debt, which sounds responsible, the effect would be a dramatic contraction of the money supply, a collapse in spending and investment, rising unemployment, and a likely recession. The system doesn't want you completely debt-free. A bankrupt person is worthless to it. What it wants is someone who can keep making payments, but can never quite pay it off. Not collapsed, not free. Generating a small, reliable stream of cash flow every month, like a personal ATM that never runs empty. This isn't a conspiracy. It is just a business model. That mechanism is abstract, but in ordinary life, it shows up in very specific forms. The mortgage. This is a long-term contract, but the other party isn't your employer. It is the bank. You can change employers. You can't pause the contract. The monthly payment date doesn't move because you are searching for meaning. Here is something most people don't fully grasp. Home prices aren't high because houses are inherently worth that much. In a financialized housing market, prices are largely determined by how much banks are willing to lend. When banks extend more credit, buyers can bid higher, and prices rise. So when you are bidding against other buyers for a home, you are not really competing for the property. You are both spending bank-created credit. The seller walks away with a high price. The bank collects 30 years of interest. You walk away with keys. The keys are light. The contract is heavy. Student loans, student debt may not be a huge issue in some countries, but in the United States, it is the largest category of non-housing consumer debt, over $1.8 trillion outstanding. And it is morally the hardest debt to argue against, because it is attached to education. This is probably the most precisely engineered debt of all. It locks you in before you have the knowledge or experience to fully understand what you are agreeing to. You need a degree because society told you it was the only path upward. You sign, you graduate, and you enter the labor market with one primary objective: not finding meaning, not exploring options, but generating enough cash flow to stay current. Barack Obama graduated from Harvard Law School. He and Michelle carried a combined student loan balance of over $120,000, even with good incomes as attorneys. They didn't pay off those loans until 2004, when Obama was in his early 40s and had just landed a $1.9 million book deal. That wasn't a failure of effort. That was a Harvard Law degree requiring a best-selling book to be resolved. As of late 2025, U.S. student loan balances stand at approximately $1.8 trillion. Serious delinquency rates have climbed significantly since pandemic. Era payment pauses ended. Millions of people did everything society told them to do, studied hard, took on debt for a degree, entered the workforce, made payments, and the bill is still following them. Consumer credit, credit cards, installment plans. Buy now, pay later services. Their marketing language is always gentle, easier living, get it now, more flexibility. Translation: the you of today can't afford it. The you of tomorrow will figure it out. What is changed is what people are putting on credit. It is not luxury items, it is groceries, gasoline, medications, children's supplies when wages don't keep up with rent, healthcare, education, and basic living costs. That stops being about spending beyond your means. It becomes the floor that keeps the floor from collapsing. The problem is, a floor with interest can become a pit. Now we come to the most sophisticated part of the system. It doesn't just take your money. It makes you feel that not being able to pay is a moral failure, a problem with you. The English word mortgage comes from Old French, mort, death, gage, pledge. A mortgage is literally a death pledge. Language has always known what debt really costs. In German, the word Schuld carries two meanings at once: debt and guilt. Being indebted and being at fault are the same word. This isn't unique to German. Across languages and cultures, debt vocabulary is tangled up with moral vocabulary. In English, we speak of owing someone an apology, paying for mistakes, being indebted to a mentor. The language of money and the language of moral obligation were never separate. This is the most sophisticated part of the debt system. It converts an economic relationship into a moral judgment. If someone put a gun to your head and made you work, you'd know you are being coerced. You'd resent it. You'd look for an exit. But if you are working to pay off debt, you feel like this is what you should be doing. This is your responsibility. If you can't keep up, that is your failure. Philosopher Maurizio Lazaretto, in The Making of the Indebted Man, put it this way: debt is a time machine. When you sign a loan agreement, you are not just borrowing money, you are handing over a portion of your future. Neoliberal society doesn't just produce consumers. He argues, it produces a specific kind of person, the indebted subject, someone who is systematically harder to manage if they're not carrying debt. Because a person in debt tends not to stop, tends not to take risks, tends not to refuse. When you sign that contract, your future is no longer open. It has a schedule, payment due the 15th, annual amount, fixed, years remaining, many. You can still choose what to eat. You can't easily choose 6 months without income. You can't choose which coffee to order. You can't easily walk away from work. That is slowly destroying you. Modern freedom, at its limit, starts to look like menu freedom. You can choose fries or salad, but you can't leave the restaurant. Now, let's connect this episode to the last one. The attention economy extracts your time after work. The debt economy ensures you have to show up in the first place. Together, they're two engines running the same machine. During the day, debt drives you into work. At night, the algorithm receives your exhaustion. and they reinforce each other. As Johann Hari documents in Stolen Focus, chronic financial stress keeps the brain in survival mode. Attention focused on immediate threats. Long-term planning shut down. Creative capacity offline. So when people come home depleted and can't bring themselves to read or plan or build anything, it is not laziness. The brain genuinely doesn't have the bandwidth left for anything that isn't urgent. Short-form video is the easiest painkiller available. 10 minutes, pressure slightly reduced. 3 hours, life slightly reduced. Then the algorithm serves up aspirational content. A better phone, a better car, a better version of a successful life. Desire generates consumption. Consumption generates debt. Debt generates anxiety. Anxiety generates escape. Escape goes to the algorithm. The algorithm regenerates desire. This is a closed loop. You think you occasionally spend a little much, scrolled a little too long. But from the system's perspective, you are an ideal modern subject, available to labor during the day, available to watch at night. Future already pledged. Emotions fully monetizable. So what can we do? There are 2 easy wrong answers. The first, make it all personal. You are undisciplined. You need to budget better. You drink too much coffee. The second, make it all structural. The system is too big. Individuals are powerless. Nothing matters. Neither is good enough. So here are 3 more honest things. First, separate shame from facts. Being in debt is not a mark of honor, but being in debt is not automatically a moral failure either. When a corporation can't pay its debts, it files for Chapter 11, bankruptcy protection, called a strategic restructuring. Executives often keep their jobs. Investors take a haircut and move on. When a wealthy individual restructures their assets through lawyers and accountants, it is called financial planning. When a country reduces its obligations, it is called sovereign debt negotiation. But when an ordinary person can't pay their credit card bill, they're a deadbeat. Same inability to pay. For the powerful, strategy. For everyone else, shame. The system needs you to treat that a moral issue. Because if you start treating it as a financial and legal calculation, which is how every institution above you already treats it, then you are no longer a guilty debtor. You are just someone assessing a situation. That is the first step. Not avoiding that, stopping self-punishment. Second, see the actual numbers, not just I owe a lot. The real question is, what is the principal on each debt? What is the interest rate? What is the minimum payment? If you keep paying at this rate, what will the total cost actually be? Which debt is the most dangerous? Which can be negotiated? Which can be transferred? Which has legal protections you haven't looked at? Anxiety is fog. Numbers are a flashlight. Most people avoid doing the math because they're afraid of what they'll find. But the numbers are already there. Whether you look or not, they're compounding. And here is what is important to know. Debt contracts are manageable documents, not sacred moral verdicts. Interest rates can be negotiated. Terms can be restructured. These tools exist. The reason no one tells you about them is that your not knowing is worth money to someone else. Third, understand that debt can be renegotiated. In 2012, in the aftermath of Occupy Wall Street, a group called Strike Debt launched a project. Rolling Jubilee, here is what they did. In the United States, when a debt goes seriously delinquent, the original creditor often sells it to a debt collection company, sometimes for pennies on the dollar. A $10,000 medical debt might sell for $500. The collection company then pursues the full amount from the original debtor. That is the business model. Strike Debt said, if they can buy debt, so can we. They crowdfunded money, went into the secondary debt market, and purchased packages of delinquent debt. Then, instead of collecting, they canceled it. They mailed letters to the debtors. Your debt has been abolished. You owe nothing. According to Debt Collective, Rolling Jubilee ultimately canceled over $32 million in debt. This shouldn't be romanticized. It didn't solve the debt crisis. It is not something every individual can replicate. But it revealed something important. Debt is not a law of physics. It is not gravity. It is a social arrangement. And social arrangements can be traded, restructured, reduced, and canceled. That number attached to your name, the one that feels like a fixed and immovable fact, has probably already been sold and repriced in markets you'll never see. You see a moral obligation. Someone else sees an asset price. That is why we need to rethink what debt actually is. Not to encourage irresponsibility, but to notice why is responsibility always demanded most from those with the least power. Let's pull the thread from clay tablets in ancient Mesopotamia to colonial tax obligations that forced people into labor markets, to debt packages traded as financial instruments. Today, debt has never been just an economic tool. It converts economic relationships into moral verdicts. It turns future time into repayment schedules. It converts life choices into cash flow management. The attention economy extracts your hours after work. The debt economy ensures you'll be back tomorrow. One makes you unable to stop. The other makes you unable to leave. It doesn't look like chains. It is more like air, present everywhere, never announced. Invisible until the moment you suddenly notice you can't breathe freely. And in that air, there is a lock. The next time you see your paycheck arrive and immediately disappear. Don't just ask, did I spend too much? Also ask, why does access to education, housing, healthcare, and basic security increasingly require borrowing from a future you haven't lived yet? Why can corporations restructure debt as a strategic decision, while individuals are told to feel ashamed for the same thing? And the most fundamental question, if ancient societies understood that debt needed periodic resets to prevent collapse, why does the modern system pretend debt can grow without limit forever? These questions won't pay your bills, but they'll give you back something the system would rather you not have: the right to explain your own situation. Because the deepest form of being trapped isn't being stuck. It is being stuck, and believing it is entirely your own fault. The debt economy's greatest achievement is making chains look like choices, and understanding that is the first time you see the lock. So, next episode. If that is what forces you to keep working, here is the question that follows. Does the work itself create any real value? David Graeber, the same anthropologist who spent years studying the history of debt, later turned his attention to modern labor, and he described what he found with a word that isn't very elegant, but is very precise. Bullshit jobs. I am Dr. Luhmann. Next episode, we talk about that.